So, good afternoon and greetings. I'm Vendrila, along with Rimsha, and we are your hosts for the session, which is a part of the virtual national conference on the theme Education through the G20 lens. The conference has been diligently curated by the Policy Advocacy and Research team at sarkarischool.in in collaboration with Civil20 Chaupal and the research vertical of Kumaragaru College of Liberal Arts, Coimbatore. It is a privilege to be welcoming you all to what we are hoping will be an invigorating discussion. I would now like to call upon my team member Sambhavi to present a formal welcome address to our guests and viewers and introduce the organization. Over to you.
Um, Thank you, Angela. Education is the key that unlocks the golden door to freedom, says George Washington Carver. A very good afternoon to one and all present here. I am Sambhavi, and I would like to welcome you all to the panel discussion on education for a better, greener, and sustainable future. I bid a very warm welcome to our mentors and esteemed panel, my fellow teammates, and the viewers. It is my honor to welcome our distinguished speakers for today, Mr. Ajay Kumar, Ms. Ashima Gulati, Ms. Anshika Srivastava, Mr. Akhilesh Anilkumar, Ms. Kanchan Kargwal, and Dr. Soumya Lakshmi Narayanan, who had taken out valuable time to grace this event with their presence and share their knowledge and experience with us. Sarkarischool.in, under the aegis of WeCitizens Foundation, is an initiative that seeks to bridge the distance between society and government schools in India. There exists today a shadow of stereotype around Sarkari schools and their impact, a poor narrative that overlooks their successes and focuses solely on their inadequacies. Sarkarischool.in aims to shift this narrative by equipping the readers with facts and stories of resounding success and hope. It aspires to begin constructive dialogue between educators, policymakers, Sarkari school students, and teachers, amalgamating all ideas and efforts into feasible solutions towards social change. With a multitude of working projects like Project Gudia, Project Arogya, Project Vedana, Project Kahani Kush, and Project Sambal beneath its wings, we at sarkarischool.in aim to uplift government school students by providing them a platform to realize their potential. The policy advocacy and research team brings together young people, young policy enthusiasts, and budding researchers who aspire to make a difference. Our strategy is to work on policy research pertaining to various topics relevant to education in India, and it aims to serve as a knowledge platform for teachers, bureaucrats, policymakers, and other stakeholders. We are sure that this session will greatly advance that aim. We are looking forward to learning from you all today. I hope this discussion inspires all our viewers to learn, grow, and aspire to bring change. Over to you.
Thanks, Sambhavi, for this warm welcome and telling us more about Sarkari School and its journey towards the educational equity. Before we proceed further, I would like to call upon Prem Raj to tell us a little about the conference and the topic of this panel.
Thank you, Rimsha. A globalized world that we live in today reflects the true inherent in the Indian ethos of Vasudev Kutumbakam, a sustainable development goal 2030, which has been underpinned global and national policy discourse since their adoption in 2015 and will continue to dominate the conversation for the coming decade, are based on organization of the power of international cooperation, one world, one family, one future. As the theme of India's G20 presidency reiterates the sentiment that a local problem can benefit from global solutions. In the spirit of promoting debate, deliberation, and discussion regarding policy challenges that Sarkari School and We Citizen Foundation, in association with Civil20 Chaupal, bring to you a virtual national conference on education through a G20 lens. The overarching theme for this year is the role of multilateral and bilateral international collaboration in bringing about education reform by improving the quality of education and reducing inequality, and understanding the process of multilateral partnership in impacting reforms, with a special focus on the practices and experience of G20. The conclusion of IPCC's global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius special report was disturbing, making half a degree more warming and would mean a substantially more poverty, extreme heat, sea level rises, even the loss of few countries. Hence, it becomes imperative for us to increasingly contribute toward environmental solutions by an active involvement as a stakeholder. In spite of active involvement of more than 300 intergovernmental organizations and an estimated 10 million of non-profit, out of which 3 million are based in India alone, we are unable to see the positive changes in the climate crisis. The reason is lack of bottom-up approaches to solving environmental crisis. The realization of pivotal role of environment at a young age through education will help us eliminate common conception that the environment is not something that is our concern. India's Pancham is promised at COP26 or more recent development like long-term low-emission development strategies and carbon capture and utilization strategies from COP27 at Sharm el-Sheikh raise awareness regarding this policy and development at the grassroots. Green education will help us collectively take action as a community. If we value like a sense of sensitivity, responsibility, and ownership relating to environmental concern are inculcated from very young age, positive changes will not far off. So this panel we seek highlight the role of green education in countering the climate crisis. Schools are also an active role in promoting notion of sustainable development. The step towards green education will also unintentionally promote more and more students to take up green careers and bring holistic approaches to lessening the magnitude of climate crisis. Come as join in the endeavor of brainstorm, learn and grow. And over to the host. Thank you.
Thank you, Premraj. Now that we understand the objective and theme of the conference in general and the session in particular, without much ado, let us begin the discussion.
So I start, Wonder.
So, yes, our first speaker
Our
today is Ajay Kumar. Yes, Rimsha.
uh, am I audible now?
Yes, yes, you are.
Our first speaker today is a social entrepreneur who has been working in the field of green energy, environment advocacy, and climate change issues for the last 7 years. He has worked on leading different projects on solar smart grid setup and innovations during the fellowship in SBI Youth for India and India Fellowship Leadership Program. He was involved in different leading fellowships such as IIM Bangalore, Wipro Seeding Fellowship, Parva Change Looms Fellowship, Global Action for Poverty Change Makers, Ambedkar University, Delhi. He loves meeting new people and spending time with nature. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. Ajay Kumar. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Remsa and Wonder. Ki we are all in the this is the climate change and this is the need of the hour, and we can see the if we can focus in our daily life, like there is a when we go out for the something, there is a waste dump around any roads you can go. There is a forest fire everywhere happening, and now it's not is it now the situation from the outside for different cities or different part of world, but it's happening around us. Like the every year, like we are facing the cyclones from Mumbai, now in the West Bengal there's a forest fire, there is a now in the Rishikesh, and we are currently seeing the landslides and how things are happening. So what's we have to do, this is the current time and we have to work on that. And it we have to work individually on our basis, like in the education when I talk about, like we in the climate change, it not only affect a single person or a particular area, but it we are going to affect by holistic thing. So हमें देखना पड़ेगा कि हम किस तरह से अपने इंडिविजुअल्स में एक तो पार्ट होता है कि गवर्नमेंट्स हम वी कैन देयर इज अ गवर्नमेंट पार्ट एंड देयर इज एडवोकेसी ऑन दैट बट द हाउ द इंडिविजुअल्स इज गोइंग टू वर्क ऑन दैट सो I we generally work with the government schools and teachers and particularly focus on ki how they are going to be there is a experiential learning how they are going to be learned this climate change the effect happening and what is the solution there is an alternative there are many children which are living in a rural area tribals area and they are living from the decades and years but now they are facing problems because there is a climate change happening and they don't have any clues so there is a need of our the youth or the students need to be not only taught as a theoretical manner but as a practical manner so there should be a practical experiences with them so that they able to connect with the local problem they able to work on that so we generally work particularly in the if I talk about in the school system, it is need of our ki we involve these things. Not only in the cities school or village school, it need of our ki we have to include in each schools, and we have to involve the youth on the locality. So we can take it forward, and we can solve the local problems also, and also the education. Ki if the youth which are not able to connect with the local they are going to face a health problem their attitudes is different so the climate change is very important to go through उनकी अंडरस्टैंडिंग बिल्ड हो उनके वो गो थ्रू कर पाए ये हेल्प करता है नेचर जो उनके आसपास की चीजें हैं वो उन्हें हेल्प करता है कि कैसे वो इन चीजों को समझ पाए उस पर वर्क कर पाए और एक एम्पैथी और एक जो उनके साथ एक कनेक्ट है वो उन्हें हेल्प करता है कि उस पर वर्क कर पाए तो अभी के सिचुएशन में जो यूथ और जो चिल्ड्रंस हैं उनको क्लाइमेट चेंज और पर्टिकुलरली उनको हर एक चीज में इन्वॉल्व होना चाहिए और उनको उनके साथ एक होना चाहिए इसमें अगर कल्चर की हम बात करें तो जब एक बच्चा अगर रहता है और उनकी जो जनरेशन है तो वी कैन इन्वॉल्व देयर पेरेंट्स देयर ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स ऑन दिस होल थिंग एंड वी ऑल्सो इन्वॉल्व when I talk about teach for green particularly so we involve local community leaders and all so this is kind of initiative we can involve the local people which are there and do some kind of experiential learning go for a walk not on particularly in a closed room for the environmental education for the sustainability we have to come out from our home or and go out and explore the thing on the same time we have if we have a limited resources like we are if we don't have a to plant a tree or do a kitchen garden but we have a table like study table we can put a small kind of plants like tulsi or aloe vera or something we can put on a study table so it's not required you have to do a big thing for the change of for the work for the environment or sustainability but by taking a small steps you can work on and participate on this thank you
Thank you so much, Ajay ji, for sharing your insights with us and shedding light on such an important topic of conserving the nature and inculcating the idea of conservation among small children. So, we found your opinion extremely enlightening. So
thank you
now I
Manju.
will, yeah. So now I will call upon Akhilesh Kumar ji. So Akhilesh ji, uh, Akhilesh ji is here.
Yes, yes.
Yes, Akhilesh ji. So can you just introduce a little about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me here. My name is Akhilesh, as mentioned. I have been running a foundation called Bring Back Green Foundation for the past nearly 3.5 years. It's based out of Kerala, but we work on a national and an international scope. Where one of the themes that we have been working on since the past, 3 years has been on climate education itself. Um, we work apart from climate education on policy advocacy, where we work closely with the ministers and ministries and government agencies within Kerala and the central government on, advising on various policy recommendations, policy issues within education itself as one, then coastal community issues, indigenous rights, zero waste management, plastic policy, things like that. Um, have been also running a sustainable fashion startup called Roller Fashion, which is a sort of a circular fashion project that has been running for the past 1 year. Recently, at COP27, I just launched an initiative called the Global Alliance for Climate-Induced Migration, where we are dealing with climate refugees and a more discourse policy level intervention and rehabilitation projects on a global scale to bring attention on climate migration, climate induced migration, and internally displaced communities, and as well as addressing their issues and bringing these issues into the common discourse. So that's about a few of the things that I have been doing recently. In terms of climate education, and I think since that's the topic where I have come from, the reason why I started engaging with climate education 3 years before was because of a session I took with small kids. In the inception of my organization, we used to work mostly in waste management, but our waste management initiatives were really successful, where schools, colleges sort of brought us in to take classes for students. And we started off with high school students, college students, and all those sort of little bit older children. But then once we were called to take classes for 5 to 7 year old students, which is like LP school students for two schools in a day, and then we thought it will be much more easier in the sense, tackling small kids would be much more simpler than dealing with bigger kids, but it was exactly the opposite. Just provide sort of storytelling approaches, visual media, and sort of try to capture the attention of like small students, as well as try to navigate them into understand how big the climate crisis or what sort of sustainable lifestyle options that they have available to choose. So we went to these schools with these small children, and it was the most difficult session we could have, we have taken so far, because working with smaller kids and making them understand is very important. But the most critical part is that whatever you say will stick with them, and they're going to take it, carry on forward for a very long time. So maybe for older kids, if you say something, it might not exactly stick with them, or it might not exactly completely transform them, or they're going to carry it forward for a longer period of time. But this is going to severely impact the way they think, and then they're going to carry it forward. So it was a very important job with us, that we provide the right information in the right sort of way. So we just did, some things through storytelling approaches, where, one of the stories we talked about was, how a monkey and a fish fell in love, and, how when there was pollution and, plastic waste and all that led to the fish dying, and how the monkey was sad and all those sort of things. And then we carried out forward with showing visual videos, pictures of all the things that have been happening due to climate change. And then this sort of seeped into their minds, as well as we try to do physical activities, separation of waste, cleanup, and a lot of other small activities, which embedded the idea of sustainability, the issue of climate change within their heads. And we thought we did a pretty fair job. We engaged with around 50, 60 students that day. But a week later is when we realized the impact of what we have done, where we got calls back from the whoever is the headmistress, or like the teacher of the schools, where they were saying that parents are calling in and they just started complaining a lot. Like, the students are not giving them peace at all. Where whenever they're going outside, they're like, "Don't use straw." They're telling the shopkeepers to not give straw. They're making their parents not use straw. They're saying, like, their beloved monkeys also will get affected, all that sort of stuff. And they made their parents buy steel bottles. They're starting to segregate waste, at least on the level that they understand. They're trying to limit their plastic usage. They're trying to transform themselves, and also along with them, these small kids have a lot of power on the parents itself and the family household, where they have started influencing them as well, and then they have started to completely change along with due to the influence of the students. And that has been so impactful, where let's say more percentage of students, a smaller set of more percentage of students in one particular class that we engaged in, actually, than how we engage with much more older students. So it becomes imperative or important that we decided on, understanding why this sort of lack of education is there right now, where this is the biggest crisis, as the previous speaker also said, where this is something that humanity is facing on such a deeper level. Everything that we have seen around us, people are being suffering. This absolute chaos and destruction. But then, why hasn't this importance seeped into our education curriculum? Or the time where I studied in school, which might not be a very long time back, there was still climate change happening. It was a part of the main discussion, but still we saw the lack of importance on these chapters, that still was very vague and very limited in our textbooks, which was almost completely skipped at a lot of times. So this is why we thought of coming up with developing our own curriculum. So 3 years back, after that particular session, we developed the first climate education curriculum for the state of Kerala, which is right now being used for training teachers, schools, education, students, everything. So that's how we came to the climate education curriculum, which is part of the curriculum being directly embedded and not something that's extracurricular or co-curricular, which gives it an importance, a place in the education system, but not exactly if you want it, you can use it, sort of a thing. So that's the curriculum we developed, and that, like, the session that was sort of our main inspiration. And then while we tackled with all sort of students, all sort of age groups, we understood what sort of education works with them. So we understood, we came up with 11 modules, which not just limits to basics of environment, but also talks about gender inequality, equity needed, social equity needed, understanding disaster management in a local perspective. So this curriculum is sort of developed in a way it can be adapted to every local region, where based on the disaster that they might be prone to, or their geography, topography, the community, all these sort of things add into the curriculum, and they can change it, which is very dynamic, and that helps, which is very much needed, rather than a very globalized sort of approach in a lot of things which might be related to education. We need a localized sort of approach, where local climate action is also something that's more important in helping the climate crisis, rather than when we see a globalized approach, it gives more awareness, but starting of the action begins at the local level. And this sort of curriculum serves that purpose as well. Then, when we carried on towards 1.5 years, we realized how important it is that the teachers should be educated. Where one of the gaps that exists would be that teachers, there might be this in the syllabus, but then the teachers don't understand how important this is, or translate this into students. It's going to be very difficult. Even if it's there in the textbook, or you have curriculum material, if it's not going to go into the minds of the children, it's going to get very difficult. So we gave capacity building to over 200 to 50 teachers initially, to understand how effective it's going to be when the teachers learn it. And then we co-created the next amendment to the curriculum, which took place, I think, 1.5 years back. Um, and that's the co-created curriculum is right now being used to train teachers and professors all across Kerala, where we're going to start working on all Kerala, professors, teachers training capacity building program with the higher education minister. And now, so that's two paths, where one is the students, where they need the education care, and the curriculum is going to bridge that. Then the teachers, who would need to understand. even if it's maths, even if it's English, whatever the language they teach, it can be interdisciplinary. They can bring elements of climate change or sustainability or all these aspects into these subjects where they teach. And it's important for them to understand how important or critical these issues are. For that, they need to have capacity building, or they need to go through the training, because they are coming from a much previous generation. Not exactly maybe right now, but the new teachers would have much more awareness or understanding, but they still need to go a bit longer way to engage with students. Like I mentioned, sustainability itself has a lot of false narratives, have a lot of myths involved, which cannot be translated to children and let them carry on. So they have to have the right information with the teachers to pass it down to the students, as well as which is going a long way. Rather than taking the wrong climate action, the right one is the most important. So the teachers also play a role. So that's sort of the context within education where I come from, what my organization has been doing. Something that's very important that we need to translate. Thank you.
That was amazing. Thank you, Akhilesh ji. I found your point about conservation of the environment and educating the children quite interesting, and it is sure that you have a vision much ahead of us. Also, I would like to say that Akhilesh ji is very humble. He did not speak much about his works. I would like to add something here. So, he is the co founder and current director of Bringing Back Green Foundation, a non profit organization working on climate crisis through active engagement with youth communities. He also serves as an ambassador and youth advisor to various international organizations and groups such as Global Youth Climate Network, World Ocean Project, and World Ocean Day, Break Free from Plastics, etc. He is the current Chief Sustainability Officer of the sustainable alternative company Varsha Eco. Apart from these, he is one of the UN Indian Select Youth Climate Leaders. So thank you so much, Akhilesh. It was wonderful having you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, I would like to invite our next speaker, Ms. Ashima Srivastava, to share her views. She is a Senior Associate, Center for Air Pollution Studies at Center for the Study of Science, Technology and Policy. She is a climate change and sustainability professional with diverse experience in the sector ranging from research, advocacy, CSR, public engagement, and other strategic based role requiring management and leadership skills. The area of her interest include climate policy, international climate negotiations, environmental policy, and just transitions. Over to you, Ms. Srivastav.
Hi everyone, thank you. And I think there was some problem. My name is Anshika. I think you got confused with Ashima Gulati. So just a small clarification over there, but no worries on that.
Sorry.
No worries. Yeah, so before me, like previous two speakers, Mr. Akhilesh and Ajay, actually stressed on the importance of why climate education is important in current times, and considering the urgency of environmental issues that we're facing today, and the challenge that is there. Education is one of the key instruments in shaping uh, young minds into taking action, but also propelling action to take place towards meeting our climate targets. So their education is a very key instrument. And so one thing I would like to stress is that, I would say environmental education, as we know, it isn't something new. There have been practices of conservation that have been practiced since centuries. You could see it in small communities which lived across span of time. They practice certain ideas of conservation, but in today's terms, when you talk about environmental education, we're talking it in a much grander way. We're talking about more, systematic form of education and with a targeted objective. So, as I think Akhilesh said, that we need to, these localized actions need to be built and created in a proper globalized system of education, which can be transferred across communities, sectors, even countries for that matter. So today, if you want to talk about transferring of climate or knowledge or education in reaching your climate objectives, this is very important that we talk about knowledge transference from one, from these groups to other groups, even, going back to indigenous sort of knowledge that has been there. So that is also one of the important aspects that we need to consider when we're talking about climate education, that knowledge transfer is important. Secondly, like I would like to stress on that, one of the critical challenges that we are currently facing when it comes to climate education is about how to convert education or awareness into action. That is a critical component that is missing, because yes, at some level we all are aware about climate education. We are all about, about the climate issues or the climate crisis, but it has not been converted into right action. So we need to have system, some channels and avenues to, make this transition happen. And this can take place in various ways. You can have formal level of education through schools, colleges, universities, where if you see over the past few years, a lot of courses and curriculums have come about. You have colleges specifically designed courses on climate change, etc. Even traditional courses, which were like a history being a traditional course, talks about, environment colonialism or something like that. So you, because of the transdisciplinary nature of environment and climate change issues, you see now this transition and, change taking place. And also at informal level, we need to have, awareness campaigns. We need to engage our policy makers. We need to engage citizen groups, etc., and have, other ways to uh, transmit this kind of knowledge in basic language to larger communities, and so that we can achieve this goal of collective action that is required to meet a climate objective. So that is also very important, I would like to stress. Thirdly, another important issue that is important in this domain would be how to incorporate a large section of the society, the marginalized, the indigenous population, and their education systems. Because considering our like the education system that has been till now has been, a more of a top down approach. There are certain sections of the society which are marginalized and are not incorporated in that capacity. So when we are designing, issues around environment, which are not simply environmental issues, they're also issues of justice, they're also issues of socioeconomic importance. We need to interconnect them and we need to give a voice to everybody. So that is very important when you're talking about environmental education across various domains and sectors. So some of these key points are important, and I would like to leave, not take a lot of time, but leave that we need to build on these local systems of knowledge and into a more global and a more systematic set of knowledge, which will be important to for collective action that is required. So, and how countries and etc. are working towards the climate challenge, we need to have a more coordinated approach and a more better knowledge transference that is required among countries and communities, societies, cultures, everything. So
Thank you so much, Anshika ji. Your ideas about sustainability and environmental education were quite thought provoking, and it gifted us a different perspective about the global issue. Thank you so much.
So now it's my pleasure to call upon our next speaker. Her vision as a registered advocate and social entrepreneur is to strengthen the social ecosystem to provide equitable and fair opportunities to all individuals. Her not-for-profit Hum Honge Kamyab provides digital health tech solutions for marginalized community, and she has co-founded Policy Light, a social enterprise. She has demonstrated her commitment to environmental sustainability through her participation as a youth delegate at the UNFCCC COP27 in Egypt in 2022. Please welcome Ms. Ashima Gulati.
Hi, thank you so much for such a kind introduction. It's honestly my pleasure to be here having this important conversation, especially during India's G20 presidency. And I'm really honored to be sharing the platform with such high esteemed leaders and honestly thought provoking speakers that we have. For me personally, at COP27, I think I made a bold claim and stated on stage saying that India will be the country that will provide climate solutions 10 times more than any other country in the world. It's bold to think about that, but honestly, I had two reasons, primary reasons that support and really take forward your journey that we will be able to provide and achieve our climate targets. Sorry. The first reason why I said that India will be able to do this is honestly looking at the age population demographics that we have in our country at the moment. India has population where we have more than 54% under the age group of 35. So we are the youngest population in the world at the moment. And where half of our population under the 54% is still in colleges and school. And if you look at the last, I think last several decades of human civilization and human existence, we have seen that youth have been the catalyst and have been the change agent of change. You look at several revolution freedom movements, it has always been the youth that have taken up the charge. And honestly, it is my humble opinion that for climate change and climate solutions as well, it is what the youth will be able to take us and obviously our journeys forward. So India honestly has the primary man and women force that will be able to take forward to our climate journey. The second primary reason why I still make this claim is honestly about the infrastructure and the system that India provides to the youth, which is the formal education system. India has the largest education system in the world, where we are catering through more than 1 million schools, around 250 plus million students in our formal education system. Around the world, if you look at right now, there are a lot of global discussions and debates where member states for United Nations, UNESCO specifically, are calling on to provide an integration of youth and a formalized education system together. At COP27 itself in 2022, we saw UNESCO calling on its member nations through its publication, where they did a primary research of more than 166 countries, where youth have demanded for quality climate education. UNESCO has put forward its task, its agenda to call upon the countries to have climate education as its core curricular component by 2025. Other than UNESCO, you look at any other international organizations and even at national organizations here, you will see a lot of global partnerships and collaboration calling upon climate education, and that's what the theme we are also discussing today. India, on the other hand, I think has already taken the plunge. We have been taught climate education, environmental studies in different fragmented ways across different age groups and obviously through different educational boards that we have. So we are already, I think, a step ahead in this entire conversation altogether, whether we are providing climate education, quality climate education to our students to enable and empower them to take on climate solutions. However, I think, there's always a way to improve and accelerate our journey. Similarly, with our educational system as well, there are certain areas where we can put focus, and a lot of our speakers here have already talked about these problematic areas or thematic areas, for instance, that we can put our energies on. I would like to highlight three of them, where I believe that if we put on our more collaborative, more focused energies and targets, I think we will be able to achieve our net carbon targets and be able to take on a on climate journey in a more collaborative manner. The first area or a thematic focus that we need to really work on is contextualizing climate education. Currently, when we talk to students, when we talk to the younger generation, we are providing an image of climate change through the melting of Arctic glaciers or through the impact that it's causing to polar bears. Now, these entities in itself are distant realities to an Indian student and even for me as well, because we can't really see the direct impact that our actions is causing to something that is far beyond of our own eyes as well. So that divide really creates an issue, creates a way that we are unable to see any behavioral change as well in our households, in our school systems when we talk about climate change. What needs to be done is to talk about local impacts of climate change. Specifically for north, we're talking about heat waves, we're talking about wildfires, we're talking about floodings, we are talking about Hindu Kush glaciers, the melting of Kush glaciers that will make climate change conversation and climate literacy more contextualized and also have a more impact on students and the education system altogether. While we're contextualizing, I think we've already heard about intersectionality and interdisciplinary nature of climate education. We have to make climate education and literacy something which is adequate and appropriate to the target group or the focus area that we are talking about. If to a student who is coming from a low income community, if we are talking about climate solutions in a way of promoting EV cars, or saying that you can switch off your ACs while you're not at home, that conversation of solutions of climate change just moves away from their understanding altogether. So, what needs honestly to be done is contextualize the way climate change impacts, and whatever the solutions that can be provided in an education system. The second way that I think that we need to really put our energies on is the role of teachers and schools in this entire conversation. We somehow are in a situation where we have seen a lot of initiatives being taken by government agencies as well as by youth, where they are trying to put more focus, and this is done across the globe, um, asking for more climate education and providing for more quality based effective ways of learning. However, the missing link here is to provide teachers a seat at the table, because at the end it is the teachers who are going to provide and disseminate this information. So we really need to make sure that teachers are confident to comprehend what climate change is, what its effects are, and how we can provide either an adaptation or a mitigation solution altogether. So that's I think that's a missing link right now in our education system. And if we really focus on that through teacher training, like someone uh, Akhilesh has just mentioned in our understanding as well, that there are curriculum being done for capacity training for teachers. I think other than providing training to teachers, it's also important to listen from teachers. They have been in the system. They are the ones who are having daily conversations with students, so they understand and they will provide more solutions as to how climate education can be disseminated in a much more effective manner than other than providing them honestly lesson plans. So that's I think my second really focused approach that can be put forward. And lastly, I think is to talk about more community collaborations, more strategic partnerships that we need to do while we're talking about climate solutions as well as talking about climate change. And there are primarily two shifts that we need to put forward here. The first is that we are talking about formal education system, right? But we also have a section of our society who are not in this system, who are not in a part of a formal education system altogether. In India, I think in most, it happens across the world. It's unfortunate, but we have female population, we have female students who drop out of schools before the start of the menstruation, and they are out of the education system, a formal means of education altogether. While we are working on making sure that this there is a shift in that approach altogether, but we have to also incorporate and find out ways of how we can engage with the female dropouts specifically for climate change. And the reason why I say this is that if you look at adaptation strategies or solution that's happening, specifically for agricultural adaptations that's happening right now in the country, you will find more than 75% of them are women led. Women have the power of making the change in terms of adapting to climate solutions or climate effects, and that's the really area where we should provide capacity training, building and training to this section of the society as well. And lastly, where I say that why we need community led collaborations is because we need to be able to provide solutions as well. We need to be talking about adaptation strategies, mitigation approaches that are there, other than talking about what can go wrong, what are the effects, and what are the impacts. When we are working with local community levels, who Akhilesh has just mentioned, that they are already working for the last centuries, providing solutions. If that connect is being able to make in an education system, I think students will have much more better and effective understanding of how they can also contribute to this climate crisis and the climate battle that we have altogether. I think I would like to sum up with my entire understanding of this is that we as a nation are currently on a great path altogether when it comes to climate change, and we've also have life mission that has come all together, promoting sustainable consumption for our students, for households, and for companies as well. I think if we are able to really pick point to the problematic areas or challenges, sorry, I think not problematic areas, but the challenges that we have at the moment, I believe that India will be in a much better advanced way when it comes to climate solutions, and we will be leading this conversation also. Thank you so much.
Thank you for adding your valuable perspective of contextualizing conversation conservation of the energy, because not everything is relevant to everyone. We understand that. So thank you, Ashima ji. I'm sure everyone found it very enlightening and inspiring.
So next we have with us Ms. Kanchan Kargwal. She is a research analyst at the Center for Study of Science, Technology and Policy. She works under the Adaptation and Risk Analysis team of Climate, Environment and Sustainability sector, which seeks to provide policy-focused solution towards climatic action. Through her work, she strives to identify and evaluate the potential impacts of future climate change on various socio-economic and ecological systems. Over to you, Ms. Kanchan.
Thank you. So yeah, Ashima, I really loved your speech, and I'm like very in line with whatever you said, and especially about adaptation because I work in climate adaptation and I know how most of the strategies are women-led. Okay, so I'll start off with talking about why there is a need of climate education, and I believe that we don't really lack knowledge about climate change, but what we lack here is the dissemination of that knowledge to the required stakeholders and to the required audience, that is the need of the hour. And so the thing is, we all know that we are not really on the path of achieving our sustainable development goals, and SDG 2030 achievement is a bit up and down right now, but still the one that are facing or will be facing the brunt of climate change are our next generation. And we also know that it's not that the next generation is just sitting there and just waiting for climate change to really impact them, but we can see like how countries, nomadic countries like Sweden, and in Sweden also there is Greta Thunberg, that she's leading the climate activism altogether by herself, and there are millions and millions of youth engaged with her on this ground. Secondly, like in the year 2019, Italy already mandated it to have climate change as a curriculum, as a subject in their schooling system, and then it was followed by New Zealand. So there are works being implemented in climate change education system, and the thing is, what we really lack is the proper channelizing of that system. And like it's not really very difficult to do it. For example, if we see even like in my school time, we used to have this best out of waste competitions and cleanliness drives, and it was all around how we need to generate our knowledge about environment and environmental conservation. But still, what I believe is educating children and moreover students within their system is really very important, and that could be done by not just like closed classroom conversations or textual conversations, but more towards like having them involved in some workshops, some capacity building workshops, some trainings, cleanliness drives and all, so that they're more learning, engaging and learning, while also developing skill set to understand how are we really impacting. And also another point would be in schools it's mostly about, so climate change is really like interconnected with all the subjects. And another thing that could be done by a school system is to also ensure that the food that the students in the mess and all that, the meals that they have are really in line with what they need. And then it's mostly it's related to the food security paradigm of climate change. Moreover, I would also like to stress upon what Mr. Akhilesh just said about the straws consumption and all. So we know that 80% of the plastic pollution is because of the ignorance, and also like the intentional wastage done by humans. And we can see that in our day-to-day life, and that is all that could be tackled through behavioral shift. And if we engage students, children and small kids at their early stage, because that's like the prime time of their curiosity and their understanding. So that could also be done through behavioral shift, and that could really help youth to engage at the certain levels of their growth and to promote environmental conservation activities. So another thing is, I would just like to give one example. So I recently participated in a global innovation lab that was involved around SDGs 2030 development and achievement of SDGs, that was called the Unleash Global Innovation Lab. Such labs and such innovation boot camps and startups could really help to engage the youth and inculcate that curiosity fever in them, so that they could really come forward within their communities and to really develop on ideas, or at least talk about climate change and sustainable development overall, and to really to focus on achieving those goals. Yeah, that's from my side. I think it's already 2:51. I won't take much time. Okay.
Thank you for adding your valuable perspective of climate change and education system to the discussion, Kanchanji. I'm sure everyone found it very enlightening.
Thank you.
Last but not the least, I would like to call Dr. Shamya Lakshmi Narayanan. She is a lab scientist and researcher turned entrepreneur, deeply passionate about young children, their immense creative potential, and their natural skills towards experimentation. She started Led by Design, a non profit venue. Led by Design worked towards empowering 6 to 15-year-old children to take action towards SDGs by providing children with access to play-based learning experience that foster creativity, critical thinking, and problem-solving skills. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, folks. Firstly for organizing this. I mean, it's been absolutely wonderful to listen to all the speakers over here. Very many, resonances, and also, too many new possibilities to go back with, right? So thank you so much for that. Um, just to I would like to start with what are some of the takeaways that I had from each of the speaker, and how at Lead by Design we are from awareness to action, for young children, right? So few speakers before me essentially pointed out that there is awareness for children, but the awareness to action has a gap. And Ashima actually pointed out about how do we need contextual climate education, so children are actually going to make sense of what is being taught to them, and at the same time the role of teachers, right? Like Akhilesh and Ashima actually pointed out about how the role of teachers absolutely essential, if we have to bring climate education into the system today, right? What I would like to present over here then is examples of how children actually go ahead to take action towards sustainable developmental goals, and how these could be integrated back into our curriculum, keeping in mind that even today our curriculum uh, the first and foremost things that we focus on the curriculum is literacy and numeracy, attaining the foundational literacy levels and numeracy levels, right? Keeping that in mind, how do you design a curriculum, and how do you make play based learning accessible to all children, so the children get excited about taking action towards climate education, climate change, but at the same time they are also improving their skills that are necessary for their everyday life, right? So that's essentially what I wanted to share with you here. Let me give you an example of how we go ahead to do that. This is for 6 to 10-year-old children. We have something called as a creative learning space, where we enable educators to empower children to take action through sustainable developmental goals, right? Which means what happens is we have created these small challenge cards that will talk about challenges that are essentially present around children, right? Like a child can easily relate to food getting wasted in their school, because most of the schools have midday meal system, or even if it is a private school, you have you bring food and food gets wasted. So turning these everyday things that we see around into a challenge for the child, so that then the child actually goes through a process of design thinking to come up with like ideas, right? What happens during this process is, imagine that you are a 10-year-old child actually sitting in your classroom and discussing about like how you're going to solve this problem along with your friends, right? You're not only thinking about the problem anymore, you're also like deeply empathetic about this problem, because you can actually relate it back to your school, your community, your classroom, right? Or maybe your friends who are actually like suffering through that problem. Now once that happens, you have already like had a emotional connect with the problem. And now like it's no longer a like you don't see it as a like somebody else's problem, right? Like you are actually looking at it as a challenge. And for children, then it becomes a more fun part for, hey, I have got a challenge over here, now how do I go ahead to like prototype, build solutions, how do I think about solutions, how do I think about using my creativity to come up with solutions itself for this particular challenge. What happens during this space, and especially when like a teacher goes ahead to hold a reflection session after the space, is that the child now is able to think for themselves that this is not a problem, or this is not a hypothetical problem that is presented. It's actually present in my classroom, it's actually present in my school. And the very next time they are actually going ahead to throw that like food or to waste water, they are now connecting it back to like, hey, this was something like that we did back in the classroom. So that's the way like for young children like we ask them to take action. um this brings out like their creativity, because it's there's no one particular solution that is being told to children. Children are asked to come up with solution. And this has the like multitude of effect, because now I'm not just coming up with my solution, right? Like even if I don't know how to articulate, I would want to articulate my solutions, because this is my idea, this is my team's idea, and I want to be able to share this idea with the world, right? So it has two effects: one, for the child themselves being able to like actually come and speak in front of others, being able to put forth their ideas, being able to confidently like creatively problem solve. But at the same time, you're also seeding in this you're also sowing in the seeds of how do you take action towards sustainable development goals for young children, right? And as they move along, right, as they move along, as they come to like middle school, 11 to 15 years, their dexterity increases. They are like they love tinkering, they love making, breaking things, more so in breaking things. But how can we involve that attitude or that behavior of children actually going ahead to break things? Or some might be involved in like writing poetry, or some might be absolutely like good with, or some might be like absolutely inclined towards like going and sharing these ideas to the world, right? Like they may not be like so much into tinkering, but they may be into so much into like actually going and sharing these ideas. So then what we do is we have a program called as Let's Take Action. As the name suggests, like the program is all about taking action in your homes, in your school, the nearest of the community that you can find. And from there like you can go as further like as long as you can, right? And the idea behind that again is like any change starts with us. Any change starts with like us being also able to take the change, and people around us being inspired by us actually going ahead to make that change, right? and and it's children, so it's easily compounded effect that like when I actually go ahead to make a change, and I see that like it's impacting, I'm not actually coming in like nobody's giving me advice, but actually I'm going ahead to take action, which I'm taking in charge then. So the agency for a student comes in place when you give the student a chance, not just to be a knowledge listener, but actually utilizing that knowledge to go ahead to take action in the community that they are surrounded by. So this is what I want to leave with like the folks over here, and as well as like to the world, that children are not just like for tomorrow. Their creative potential is for today, and they actually have all the necessity means that are already available to them to take go ahead to take action, because that's the natural like attitude. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Soumya. Your ideas and your insights are too valuable for us. and it was a pleasure hearing you. Okay, so I would like to say that this was a very enlightening discussion, and to express our gratitude, is Preeti here? So I think Preeti can present the vote of thanks. Okay, Preeti isn't here. I'll do it myself. Okay, so I'm delighted to express my gratitude and appreciation towards all the esteemed guests and dignitaries who have graced this conference with their wisdom and ideas. Thank you so much for joining us. It was truly thoughtful, thought-provoking discussion, and it would not have been possible without you, our esteemed panelists. My heartfelt thanks to the organizing team and Sarkari School for their hard work towards making the discussion a successful one. Last but not the least, I would like to thank you all, or our audience and listeners, for actively being part of the conference and being with us the whole time. We really appreciate your participation. And once again, thank you everyone who has contributed towards making this event a success. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.